success is personalized, right? There's no business book, there's no business guru who can tell you what success is, because what your success is different to mine. Success is subjective. So what are your life goals? What are your values? What are your principles? Why are you doing what you're doing? Who is your community? What are you out here to accomplish? If you haven't given that enough thought, you will be running towards somebody else's definition of success. And when you get there, you might actually find yourself dissatisfied. And this is something that we see a lot. So as business owners and as entrepreneurs, we're in a slightly more privileged position where we can, to some extent, create our futures. And I think this is something which everybody should start with. Like, okay, I'm going to build this, and it's going to become successful. And at that point, my life and my business will look like this. And once that is clear, well, that's success.
This is Challenger Brands, helping you build better brands and businesses. Hosted by Illustrado, the brand development and creative agency for ambitious and audacious challenger brands.
Welcome to another episode of Challenger Brands, where we talk about brand development, marketing, sales, entrepreneurship, and everything else to help you build better brands and businesses. I'm Lalaine Benitez, Managing Director at Illustrado.co, and in each episode, we're going to be talking to inspiring industry leaders on certain topics that are going to help you get actionable insights, especially to help you in your business. And today we have a very special topic for all you entrepreneurs out there: how to scale your business. How do you grow your business? Where do you even get started? I think this is a question that most entrepreneurs would ask themselves, right? Where do you even start? So today I'm hoping that we will shed light on this topic. Our guest for today is Murtaza Manji, a serial entrepreneur. He is an accomplished business and strategy coach. He's also an esteemed speaker. As the managing partner for Kaizen Business Group, Murtaza has worked with over 1,000 CEOs and business leaders across the GCC, the UK, and East Africa. His company, Kaizen Consulting, is helping companies reach their goals in the future, okay? And they have helped over 1,450 companies with their special Kaizen principles that focus on people and process. The Kaizen Consulting Group has worked with companies like Fitness First in the UAE, Landmark Group, Naboodah, among others, and they have personalized coaching and consulting services. So Murtaza, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Murtaza, this is such a big topic. Are you ready to shed light into this huge question for today?
Let's start. We'll see how far we get.
All right. Okay, question number one, Murtaza. How does a successful business look like? What are the landmarks? What are the hallmarks of a successful business?
So, I was thinking about these questions when we were looking at them earlier, and I think there's something that's really important to mention before we get into all of this, because we're going to be talking about a lot of business topics, but there's something which I think is worth bringing up front. Success is personalized. Right? There's no business book, there's no business guru who can tell you what success is, because what your success is different to mine. Success is subjective. So what are your life goals? What are your values? What are your principles? Why are you doing what you're doing? Who is your community? What are you out here to accomplish? If you haven't given that enough thought, you will be running towards somebody else's definition of success. And when you get there, you might actually find yourself dissatisfied. And this is something that we see a lot. So as business owners and as entrepreneurs, we're in a slightly more privileged position where we can, to some extent, create our futures. And I think this is something which everybody should start with. Like, okay, I'm going to build this, and it's going to become successful. And at that point, my life and my business will look like this. And once that is clear, well, that's success. So
I like that. Let me just acknowledge that, because now you're giving us the permission to not feel bad every time we see an Elon Musk, talking about his successes and everything, right? Because this is like the era of the super entrepreneur. And sometimes when you see all these guys doing such big things around the world, you sort of feel very small with the kind of business that you have. So it's really good that you preface the discussion with something like this.
Since you've brought up certain names, let me say something which I know is going to get me some criticism from people. And that is, not everything that you hear about, see, read is the entire unfiltered truth. Okay? Remember, what comes out in the press is a press release.
Public relations.
Public relations. So don't ever feel bad. Whatever you read about in the paper, apart from the fact, it could have been an amazing story from an amazing human being who's really, really done something fantastic in life. But you're still only seeing the tip of the iceberg. You're not seeing the thousands of sleepless nights. You're not seeing the time that their personal credit cards were maxed out because they had no money left. You're not seeing any of that. So don't feel bad. Whether the person that you're looking at is truly accomplished or just has a great story to tell, that's not your race. That's not your story. I mean, great for them. We look up to them, we admire them, we learn what we can. But that's not my story.
I love that. That's very good to remember. So people, please define success for yourself. Lesson number one today.
There's an analogy of the fisherman on the beach. You know this one?
Tell us about that. Please share that story.
So many versions of this, right? So fisherman is chilling on the beach. It's late morning. He's sitting back. He's relaxed. He's got his sun hat over his face, and the guy walks up and he says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm relaxing." He says, "But it's daytime. You need to work." He said, "No, I caught my fish for the day and I've sold it to the market. I made my money. Now I'm relaxing." And he said, "No, look, you have time. You have a boat. You have resources. You should go and fish more." He said, "Okay, and then what?" He said, "And then you can get a second boat, hire people." He said, "Okay, and then what?" He said, "Then you can build a team. You can have a fleet of ships." He said, "Okay, and then what?" He said, "Then you have people doing your work for you, and then you can sit and relax on the beach all day." Right.
There you go.
There you go.
He's already sitting relaxing on the beach all day.
So which definition of success works for you?
Exactly.
Right?
Very good lesson.
So
there.
I think this is the first. And if somebody takes this away and look, honestly, if you stop listening here, please don't, but if you stop listening here and you say, "I am going to stop and go away and define success for me," and then come back and continue this conversation, I think that would be a really, really powerful takeaway from today.
That's a very important lesson. It's very important. It's very kind as well, especially to entrepreneurs who always have this, habit of beating themselves up, making sure that they're performing and, running that race. So I think very good lesson.
So let me answer your question.
Yes. Now tell us about business success. What does it look like? How does it feel like? How does it smell like? What are the hallmarks?
There are, I think, in my sort of humble opinion, there are 3 characteristics which make a business as an entity, just a business, successful. The first one is replicability, and I would preface that by saying automated or autonomous replicability. The second is scalability, and the third I would say is adaptability. So replicability meaning the output is consistent over time, right? So you go to McDonald's, you get a burger. In terms of quality, it's not great. It's a pile of fat and salt, and it's not great. It's not good for your health. So it's a 2 out of 10.
Speak for yourself, Murtaza.
It's a 9 out of 10. No. But it is.
I'm trying to be unhealthy here. Yeah.
It is always exactly what it always is exactly the same.
Yes,
whatever in the world you
true.
go, it's exactly the same. That's replicability. Now, whether you love it or you hate it, you can't argue that they have nailed that. Now, the higher level of that is autonomous replicability, which means the output is exactly the same. It's exactly as good every single time, but it's not you as the owner that's doing it. So somebody else or something else, your system, is producing the results that you would have produced perfectly over and over and over again. You need that. Without that, your business is never going to grow. The second thing that you'd need is scalability. So scalability has got 2 parts. There's macro and micro, or external and internal. Externally, we need to make sure that we don't have constraints that would limit the growth scope of this business. If I have a gold mine and I'm prospecting for gold, there's an externally imposed limit on how much I can get, right? It doesn't matter how good I am, eventually there's no more gold. So I need to make sure that I'm not heading towards a dead end. And then internally, I make sure that there's no glass ceilings that I or my business have artificially imposed upon ourselves that would stop us from growing. So if a person is a bottleneck, or if a system is a bottleneck, or if there's an insane amount of resource that's required for something to be done, and we can't just multiply that every single time. These are all constraints. So with this constraint in place, the business will have a limit to how far it can go. And then the third is adaptability. Adaptability basically is, are you ready to change? Because if you aren't, you have a clock on your head. At some point, you're going to run out, because you cannot stay the way you are forever. So adaptability is not just from the owner's perspective, but as a business, are we ready to embrace the changes that come about? Everyone's up in arms right now about how ChatGPT is going to replace jobs and businesses. And well, are we surprised?
We shouldn't be.
If you had your eyes halfway open, we were talking about AI years ago. Years ago. We knew exactly, okay, it's cool to see it in practice, but we knew years ago that this was coming. Did we prepare? No. Stop complaining. It's your fault. So adaptability is something that I think is a third core component. So if you got these three in place, from my sort of limited perspective, I would consider this to be a successful business.
So you said replicability, scalability, and adaptability.
Yeah.
Let me just go back to scalability, or replicability rather. How does replicability look like for a B2B business, or a business that is delivering services instead of product?
Doesn't change. It doesn't change. So think about an accounting firm, right? That's a B2B service, right?
Yeah.
What if they were to give you, with a margin of error, your numbers? Like, so here's your report at the end of the month and the year. This is how much profit you made, plus minus 10%. Would you be happy with that? No. I mean, I'm paying you to do these numbers accurately for me. Right?
Definitely, yeah.
So you got to deliver perfectly every single time. If I am hiring a company to do a survey, a land survey, right? I'm going to be putting up a building. I need somebody to come in and do a survey on the land. And they come to me and say, well, roughly this is what it's going to look like. I don't need roughly. So you got to deliver every single time. Now with a product, it's just easier to quantify quality. It's easier to run QC metrics. But that doesn't mean it's any different for B2B service. If anything else, the bar is a little bit higher.
Yes, it is,
product, I can
actually.
take it away and replace it for you. Service, I'm kind of stuck. If I file your VAT returns and I make a mistake, you got a fine. So as a service provider, it's really important to get it right the first time. So I don't think it changes at all. It's just we define what the metrics of quality are, and we make sure that we're hitting them.
You just have to adopt the concept, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you one more thing that I've heard you speak about in one of your workshops, Murtaza. Sellability. I think that is part of being a successful business, rather, right? If a business is saleable,
yeah,
that's part of being a successful business.
So sellability is a very encompassing term. Okay, so we actually have this test that we do. It's called the Wheel of Sellability. You're welcome to take it. Your listeners are welcome to take it. Just get in touch if you want it. It's a free thing that we do. It's a very short quiz around, I believe it's 10 factors that will score you on how sellable your business is. But all of those 10 factors come under these three. Now, if you tick off these factors, whether 3 or 10, your business is something that an investor would be interested in potentially acquiring, right? So here's how you want to think about this. If you have a successful business, you own an asset that is paying out dividends, right? So I own this asset, and every month or quarter or year, it's paying out some dividend. If you want to purchase this asset from me, you could take over and it'll pay you the dividends. Now, if this business only works because I make it work, now it's not paying me dividends, it's paying me a salary, which is fine, but it's a very different thing. Now, why would you buy this? Because you're going to have to work in it. Now, if you have to work in it, there's a time cost. As an investor, I buy an asset which I can park, walk away, come back, and it's made more money. I'm not buying a job. I will not buy your job. It doesn't matter how good it is, I will not buy your job.
It doesn't make any sense, yeah.
No. Any serious investor would not buy anybody else's job. So sellability is a successful replicable, autonomous, scalable, adaptable business entity, which somebody would potentially be interested in acquiring.
I think that's a good metric, even if you really didn't want to sell your business, right?
It needs to look. Should you only clean your house when you have guests?
That's true.
Why would you only clean your business when an investor is coming to look at it? Keep it clean. You live there.
Exactly. You reap the benefits, right?
You reap the benefits. You enjoy it. You love it.
Exactly. I think that's very clear now. But now let me go to this topic. A lot of founders have started their business based on their own skills and capabilities, right? Somebody told me before that these are technical founders. They're the ones. It's their skill. It's their trade. That is the heart of the business. How difficult is it, for a technical founder or an entrepreneur to be able to scale their business if the business depends on their skills? If the business requires them to be working in the business, how difficult is it, and what advice can you give for them to be able to cycle out of that?
Your listeners are in one of two places right now. Either they are involved primarily, so their time primarily goes in execution of the work of servicing clients, and that would be in their earlier stages. And as the business grows, inevitably, the business owner would oftentimes find themselves more tied up in everything but actual client delivery. So they'll be the ones that are managing finance. They'll be the ones that are hiring and firing people. They'll be the ones that are talking to potential contracts. They're the ones who are doing everything else. And I'll give you an example of this. I had a client who ran an architectural firm. For a local business, one of the bigger ones. Beautiful. The stuff that they made is like the houses and the offices and the buildings that they've designed are just gorgeous. And it was started by a person who is an architect, whole and soul, loves his profession, beautiful, like a super accomplished artist. And one of the first things he said to me was, I start design at about 8 or 8:30 in the evening after everybody goes home. Now he's got a team of about 20-something designers and engineers and architects. And he's got a team that does all of that. But he said, what I love doing is design. And I start that at 8 o'clock in the evening after everybody has left. Because the whole day I'm just firefighting. I'm fixing this problem, I'm talking to that contractor, I'm government approval. It's just everything else but what I wanted to do. It took us about 1.5 years. And if you go to his office today, you can't tell who the owner is. Because he's sitting with the design team. And he's design, and he shows up at 9, 10 o'clock, comes in whenever he feels like, designs for 12 hours and goes home. And somebody else is running the business and doing all the headache. So I would argue that you would probably find yourself getting more drawn into everything but complete operations as the business tends to grow. As that progression is happening. So initially you're doing the operations, I would say build systems. So that when others are coming on board, they're doing it as well as you are. As you find yourself drawn into other parts of the business, and it's not a bad thing, you have to be involved in every part of the business at some point to make sure that it's running well. Build systems. When you're in finance, build systems. For ops, build systems. For HR, build systems. For marketing, build systems. So that as you're cycling through these different departments, it's all becoming more and more and more efficient. That actually gives the entrepreneur time to do what it is that they want to do. So if they want to spend more time in ops, go do it. It's your business. Do what you want to do. If you want to spend more time with client dinners, do it. I have a client who is at work from 6 p.m. onwards. The whole day, they're just mucking around, talking to the team, having fun. Work starts at 6 o'clock because that's when networking begins. That's when their client dinners begin. That's when their socials begin. That's where they make their money. So until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, he's working. It doesn't look like work, but that's work. That's his job. He's the rainmaker. So it doesn't have to go in any one direction, but just to answer that question, wherever you are in the business, just make sure you're trying to processize and systemize it so that you can step away and somebody else can take over, whether that's operations or something else.
I just want to pick the most important parts in there. Create systems.
Yeah.
I know that you've said a whole lot of things. A lot of those things are very important, but just so that our viewers and listeners will not miss that, create systems. So key. And another thing that you were saying before, that not every entrepreneur is necessarily a business owner, right? Quite a controversial statement to make, but please explain that to us.
An entrepreneur starts a business. An entrepreneur starts up this entity that they happen to own, which does a certain thing, right, with a product or service. A business owner owns an asset. Those are two very different descriptions, right? An entrepreneur starts up an accounting firm because they're an accountant and they can do this really well. So they set up, the trade license, and they sit down and they try and win some clients, and they're doing the books. A business owner has a system that's making money and delivering results, whether or not they are working in it. And that's, I would say, the kind of the delineation between the two. So do I own the system, or do I own my own job? If I'm an entrepreneur, you can't fire me from my company. It's my company. But it's still my job. If I don't show up, work doesn't get done. Whereas if I'm a business owner, I don't have to show up. Work gets done. I could be off working on other things that could be my charity. It could be my, I don't know, my yoga retreat that I've wanted to do. I will go away for 3 months and go on a yoga, whatever it is. But the business doesn't stop working.
That's a very important thing. Otherwise, you're just self-employed, right?
Yeah, self-employed.
Which is not what we want to be in that space.
Going back to that first thing, it's not a bad thing, right? We had the Royal Atlantis open recently. Beyonce had come to do the opening. I don't remember the numbers. She was paid something like 25 million for that. Nobody would turn down an hour's worth of work for 25 million.
I guess.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But the difference was that I don't think she had the option. Beyonce, if you're listening to this, feel free to call me and tell me that I'm wrong. I don't think she had the option that morning to say, I don't feel like going to work today.
Beyonce cannot create a system and send another Beyonce.
She can't get somebody to sing for her. Messi cannot get somebody to play football for him. Beckham cannot get somebody to go and do his modeling for him. They're self-employed. They're not complaining about it, but they're self-employed. Now, maybe they have other businesses. I'm not saying, I'm just in that particular scenario. Whereas a person who owns a modeling agency, or somebody who owns a record label, or somebody who owns the Royal Atlantis, doesn't have to show up for work that day. They have the option, right? So that's the biggest difference. Do you own your time, or does somebody else kind of dictate your time?
Yeah, that's very important. That's one thing that we need to work on really as entrepreneurs trying to grow and trying to scale the business in the future. There's this famous saying, working in the business and working on the business. And I think, again, this is a hallmark of, if your business is doing well, you get to work, or you should be working more on the business than inside of it. Can you give some tips to our entrepreneurs out there on how they can balance it? Let's just explain this idea a little bit further.
I would preface by saying that this is one of those things that we say to make us sound really wise and like we know so much. It's actually a very it's a nice line. It is, but the premise of it is, if you are doing the do of the business, if you're doing the work, who's navigating, right? If you're doing the driving, who's doing the navigating? Like that's what it comes down to. So when you're in the business, you're working more day to day, more short term. When you're on the business, you're working more long term. That's kind of the balance that you want to hit. Now, not every entrepreneur is in the position where they can work solely on the business. Unfortunately, very many are in the position where they can and do work very much in the business. So a good rule of thumb is kind of 80-20, right? 80% in the business, that's fine. But 20% of your time needs to be on the business. And this is your strategy time, this is your thinking time, your growth time, what are you doing? So in the business would be day to day, week to week, month to month. On the business would be 6 months on, year to year, 5-year goals. That would be on the business. Don't neglect either one for the other. So spend enough time in operations to know what's going on, to have your finger on the pulse, so that you're not unpleasantly surprised, a client shouldn't call you and say, listen, it's been 6 months, where's my, you haven't delivered. And you say, wait, hang on, what? Really? This is the first time I'm hearing about it. And you shouldn't be so involved in the business that tomorrow an opportunity comes and goes and you don't have the chance to, or the time or the effort or the resources to be able to go and explore that. So 80-20 is a good balance, just kind of by rule of thumb. But if I can make a suggestion, and this would be something that perhaps people could try and work towards, try cycling your role every few months. So every, let's say, 6 months, switch your area of focus in your business.
This is
now
that.
assuming that you have a
That's
team
a great
that's
idea.
actually doing the stuff, right? So 6 months, go work in ops, go do it. There was this headline recently of, I think, the CEO of Talabat, who spent a couple of weeks on the motorbike, delivering deliveries. I think I got that. I think it was Talabat who did that. Zappos, my go-to example for great businesses. Whatever position you're hired for in Zappos, your first 3 months, you're in customer service. Because Zappos is a customer service company that happens to sell shoes. They could sell anything. They've chosen to sell shoes. They are a customer service company. That's what they are. So whoever joins the company, you could be finance, you could be admin, you could be sales, you could be management. 3 months, you're on the phone lines. Because that's the heart of the business. So as entrepreneurs, I would say cycle yourselves through.
That's a very good
Spend 3
tip.
to 6 months in ops. Spend 3 to 6 months in finance. Spend 3 to 6 months. And as you're doing it, you're going to find out inefficiencies. You can redo or create from scratch the processes. And you're staying fresh. You come in. Look, what do entrepreneurs do really well? We fix problems. What happens when there's no problems to fix? That's our next problem. So we create problems. Right? Entrepreneur to entrepreneur. Don't we do that?
Of course.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah.
So if there is no problem, that's a problem. So I will create a problem to fix it.
Keep everybody on their toes.
So I would rather just stop.
I like that.
Move. Go do something else. Go do something else. I had a client who had a couple of branches, and every time he would focus his attention on one branch, the other branches would do better. And when we started working together, he was bringing up this issue, and I said, look, I'm seeing a correlation between your presence and performance, and it's not a good one. So his literally week 1 coaching homework: stop going to the office. You can go 1 day a week to this office. You can go 1 day a week to that office. Otherwise, work from home. Just stay out of everybody's hair. Business did great. They were already doing really great, but just his constant involvement was hurting them.
Get out of your own way.
Get out of your own way. So I think that would be one suggestion. Cycle around, fix as you go, and then just leave people to do what they do best.
That's a very good tip. And don't forget the 80-20.
Yeah, 80-20.
80-20 rule.
Yeah. 80-20. 80% in the business, 20% on the business, you're good. If you want to do more, do more.
Super.
This is Challenger Brands. Please subscribe to our channel and share our content. Follow us on our agency's social media pages, Illustrado.co, on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, or subscribe to our newsletter via our website, www.illustrado.co. Thank you to our sponsors for today's episode. Rove Hotels. Rove Hotels are a jumping-off point for city explorers, simply designed for the young and young at heart. Born in Dubai, Rove is an award-winning lifestyle brand offering well-designed hotels, fuss-free service, and great value in well-connected locations. More than just a bed for the night, Rove provides rovers, the missing link to connect you to the city like a local, and explore the track less trodden in a relaxed environment where you can be yourself. With sustainability, local art, and high-performing functionality at the heart of its brand, Rove represents a new niche of hospitality for the digital nomad looking to become part of the neighborhood, even when they're just passing through. Please check them out at rovehotels.com.
All right, Murtaza, when is a business ready to scale? Are there markers? Are there signs? What can people look out for?
No. You want me to go on? Yes, there are. No, look, the short answer is there's no clear signals. Scaling is exponential growth, right? So you kind of have a business trying to go for linear growth. So we'll try growing 15, 20, 30, 40% year on year. But then you start, if you're doing it well, you start hitting this, what they call the J curve. So or the hockey stick, right? Where it starts going up a little bit steeper. And that's usually at the point at which we would consider the business now scaling. So if you think about it from a very sort of, graphical perspective, you have, months or years across your x-axis, and you have output or revenue on the y-axis. And as that curve starts going steeper, which is what everybody wants because it means more money, you have to also keep in mind that, when the curve is a little flatter, every time you step back or it flattens out, it's not a huge change. But the steeper it gets, every change could potentially be very difficult to bounce back from, right? So think about climbing a gradual slope versus climbing a flat, like a sheer mountain face. If you slip one step on a gentle slope, you're roughly where you were. But if you slip one step on a sheer mountain face,
True.
you could potentially be a lot further down. The same applies in businesses. So when you are thinking about scale, you have to think in terms of greater risk as well as greater reward. Do we have the buffers that would allow us to mitigate or absorb that sort of an impact when it comes? Because there's no if about this. They will come. Like, nobody goes through life without taking a couple of punches. And your business will take some punches as well. And that's fine. Makes us stronger. So when you do slip, what's your plan B? What's your mitigation? Like, let's say, for example, we try this new thing, we put a lot of money into it, and it doesn't work. What would the impact of that be? Now, if the impact of that is detrimental, like it will kill us, you're probably not ready to scale.
Okay.
That's kind of that's a mental mindset thing. The second marker to look out for. So the first marker to look out for is, have we calculated the upside and the downside, and are we prepared both ways? Okay. It's not just a risk of falling backwards. It could be a risk of actually having too much business that you can't deliver.
Yes.
Right? I don't know if you've had this. I've born and brought up in Dubai, and I've had these little, hidden gem restaurants that I used to love going to as a kid. Right? It was quiet. It was homely. Everybody knew each other. They knew our names. They had this amazing dish that was my standard. And then as that restaurant started getting more and more popular, they lost everything that made them so special in the first place. So now they got busy. Now the quality of the food
went too
dropped.
fast. Yeah.
They grew too fast. So the thing that made them successful killed them. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen with the business either. So we don't, take a fall that will hurt us, and we don't go so far up that we can't actually keep up anymore. We run out of oxygen, you could say. The second thing I think to keep an eye out for is, do we have any glass ceilings that we may have artificially imposed on ourselves? So this comes back to the scalability thing I mentioned. Or are there any externally imposed barriers that will hurt us or stop us if we continue to grow? And if these barriers to growth do not exist, that's another really good sign. So there is a system in place for winning business, for servicing clients, for managing the money, for managing the team, for managing resource. These are in place. Okay, we could probably scale. But if everything comes to me, eventually I run out of steam. I can't take on any more, and we hit the ceiling. Any other ones? I think those would be two major ones to keep an eye out for. If you got those in place, I think a business has the seeds. Now they can scale if they're willing to put in the time, effort, energy, and run the risk. Yeah.
I think just to make the differentiation for our viewers and listeners, right? There is a difference between growing and scaling, and you've referred to these two things, Murtaza, in the previous conversation. Just explain this to our viewers and listeners right now. What's the difference between growing and scaling?
So I use the word grow as linear growth. So steady, progressive, consistent, ambitious, but linear growth. Scale is a subset of growth, but that's where you start seeing that exponentiality come in. As you know, I love reading and I love recommending books. There's an excellent book called Exponential Organizations. They've just released EXO 2.0, which goes over the 11 factors that contribute to companies becoming exponential. There's several exponential organization certified coaches around the world, and who help clients actually go through this process. That's one of the things that we do as well at Kaizen. But this is really when you're ready to switch it on. So buy the book, read the book, do the exercises, and when you see, I think they say 6 out of 10, if you can get, or 6 out of 11, if you get 6 of those components in place, you're ready for scale. So that would probably be the difference. Do you want linear growth, which is great, or do you want exponential growth, which is a lot of fun and hard work?
That's very interesting. Now let's talk about the key steps in scaling. I know that you have a very well-established, system in Kaizen. Tell us about the key steps. What should we be looking at?
So Kaizen works on the foundation of principles, right? So we don't do strategy as much as we focus on principles, because strategy will change. If I were to tell you to, you have to do social media marketing, and in 5 years' time, everybody suddenly realizes that social media is actually not such a great thing for our mental health, and we all stop using it, that strategy dies. But the principle of marketing will not die, because that has existed, since the beginning of business. So we work on principles. So, for example, branding is a principle, right? When you have an established brand, people know you and what you stand for and your values and what you deliver, and you're known for that. That is a principle. It doesn't matter whether it's, it was carved on a board and hung outside the shop, or it exists in the metaverse. Brand is brand. So anybody who doesn't have, an amazing brand and you want it, Illustrado, you're here. Pick up the phone, call them, do it, get it done. You need to, you need to make your voice heard. The principles that we use when it comes to businesses, and it's well over 1,450 different businesses that we've had the honor to work with. It works on kind of 3 levels. So if I go back to those 3 principles, right? So the replicability, scalability, and adaptability. The first 3 principles are to do with the business survival. If any of these principles are missed, your business will not survive, or you'll be fighting to survive. The first one is the money flow: marketing, sales, finance. Right, that flow of money is an unbroken flow. We break it, we compartmentalize it and put it in departments and silos, and then we complain that people don't talk to each other. Of course they don't, because we've told them to sit in different offices. Finance is in a locked room. Nobody sees what the numbers are. Of course they're not trusted. So first thing, just get everybody on the same page. The money flow has to be clear. What does marketing mean? How does it convert into sales? And how is the money managed? Marketing being one of those components. The second principle is operations. Everything that we do to service the customer that we bring on board. This could be B2B, B2C, product, service, hybrid, tech, doesn't matter. Whatever you do as a business comes under operations. And we also talk about scalability in this one. And then the third component of survival, or third principle of survival, is to do with people. Get great people on board, make sure their performance is at least where you need it to be, and if possible, put learning as a KPI in the company. Everybody needs to learn. So those 3, finance and growth, operations and scale, people and performance. If we get those in place, we have replicability. And if you've done it really well, we have autonomous replicability sorted. The next principle is an underlying principle which kind of elevates these to really multiply their output, is technology and innovation. Technology and innovation is how can we do what we're doing at a much larger scale. So we used to keep our accounts in books, right? Journal and ledger were the names of the actual bound notebooks that people would record entries. Then we started using Excel
then
we started using Tally. Then we started using maybe basic ERPs like Zoho. Then we started using all-out ERPs like SAP or Oracle. The technology changed, but the principle of finance was the same. So if your accounts are incorrect, your software doesn't matter. Software doesn't fix anything. Technology doesn't fix anything. It only magnifies. So if you're inefficient, it makes you more inefficient. If you're efficient, it makes you very efficient. So after the first three principles, tech and innovation will help a company do that at scale,
At scale.
scalability. And then the fifth principle, which kind of goes through the heart of everything that we do, is leadership and culture. Leadership and culture comes down to adaptability. We talk about leadership at every level. When I am, as the owner of my company, when I am talking to a client or a supplier, I am a leader in that scenario. But let's say I run a cleaning company, right? And I sign up a contract with, let's say, Rove Hotels. In that situation, I am a leader. But then once the job starts, my team who come here, who are doing the cleaning, who are arguably not the highest paid people in the company, they are representing my brand and my company here. In this situation, they're the leaders. How are they talking to people? How are they talking to the customer? How are they doing their job? To what extent are they taking pride in their work? This is leadership. And if we don't teach leadership, and if we don't have leadership as a value throughout the organization, we lose this adaptability because people are rigid. People are not pushing themselves. So leadership and culture is then that last one. And I think these components, so finance and growth, ops and scale, people and performance, without this, your business dies. Tech and innovation elevates the output. Leadership and culture, heart of any good company, allows the company to do tremendous things because everybody's vested in this. Is that?
It sounds like a mountain
It's a lot.
of so many interlocking tasks, right?
It's a lot.
How does an entrepreneur not get overwhelmed? How do you take the first step on this? It's a huge undertaking, right? But as entrepreneurs, we are always seeking ways to grow and evolve and scale one day. What's the right approach, Murtaza?
Overwhelm is not having too many things to do. Overwhelm is having too many things to do all at the same time. So if you want to avoid overwhelm, just break it down into where are we starting and what are we doing in order of importance and urgency. So are all of those 5 principles important? Yes. Are all of them relevant? Yes. Do we do all of them today? No. We do one thing. We do one component, one tiny subset of one of those principles. And if we pick the right one, we have a disproportionately large impact. So a small tweak, large impact. Another small tweak, large impact. And now we start building on that impact. It's like when you start going to the gym for the first time.
Yeah.
Right, you go in there, you haven't been working out, you're not in the best shape, you come inside, you see all these amazingly fit guys and girls working out, and you think, I don't belong here. You say, no, I'm going to be here. I need to be here. So first time you get on the treadmill, 5 minutes later, you're winded. And you still have 45 other machines to do. That is very, very depressing. That's very demotivating. So you make a plan. You say, look, you know what? For the first week, I'm just going to be on the treadmill for 1 kilometer. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to get on the treadmill. I'm going to walk 1 kilometer. That's it. Next week, I'm going to get on the rowing machine. I'm going to do 500 meters. That's it. And if you just did that, you'll start seeing change. So don't get overwhelmed. Look, people like me need to see the big picture, right? When I'm looking at a business, I can't say, let's fix that one thing. I can't, because that's a disservice to the client. I need to look at the whole picture and say, okay, there's 45 things wrong over here. But it's also my job to point and say, okay, but if we do this one, we could probably fix 6. If we do the other one, we could fix another 3.
Yeah.
So let's start with that one. And then there's less overwhelm because there's fewer things to do all at the same time. So I would say just start with a plan.
One step at a time, right?
One step at a time.
And I like what you earlier suggested, and perhaps we can marry these two things, right? Maybe, how entrepreneurs can cycle through the whole operations.
Yeah.
Be in one department at a period at a time, and then you can do your tweaks there. Probably that would be a good way of proceeding with something like this.
Just pick one. If you can't decide where, write out a list, throw a dart, wherever it lands. Just start fixing one at a time.
But the most important thing is to do something. Right?
It's
you
about
can't
activity.
just wish it, right?
No. It's there's a saying that those who can do, those who can't teach. Just do it. Don't talk. Just do something.
Do it. Yeah.
Do something.
Murtaza, was there ever a time that you told an entrepreneur that it's impossible to grow or scale? Are there businesses or are there entrepreneurs where you say that it's not going to happen for you?
Yes, I try saying it a little bit more delicately than that. But we do come across businesses where, as they stand, there's probably not much more to do. If they're happy with that, that's great. If they're not happy with that, I'm sorry. I guess not. It's not my role to change reality. Yeah. So we had, for example, last week. Last week I spoke to a person who'd been running. So his father had been running the business since the late 80s. And it got to the point where the father wanted to step down, son didn't want to take over. Business was not in a position where it could run autonomously. Because it was not autonomous, they were not able to find an investor who could take over the business. And he was saying, oh, if we could get an investor. And I said, look, I'll be really honest with you. I have no idea how you're going to get an investor to agree to buy this. I would not buy this. If you offered it to me, I don't want to buy it. And I don't know anybody who would want to buy this. So I'm sorry. I as far as I can see, my recommendation, if you're not going to do this and he needs to step down, just wind it down quietly and leave.
That's a pity.
1980. So we're talking about a 30-year-old business.
Wow.
That can't stand on. I mean, if you had a 30-year-old child who still needed to hold your hand to walk,
that's crazy and sad. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd probably have failed them as a parent. Why is it that this business? I mean, if you had a 5-year-old child who still needs your hand to walk, you've failed them as a parent because you haven't taught them independence. Why is a business not able to stand and go on its own 2 feet? Why have I failed that business and not allowed it to become autonomous and grow without me?
That's that's a really that's amazingly sad, I would say. So what is the best thing if you can address the mindset of an entrepreneur? What's the best thing that somebody can do to get into growth, to get into scaling in the future? If there's one thing that you can tell them, what's that?
So one thing that we see a lot in smaller businesses, where the founders are still, actively involved in many components of the business, is a business is more often than not a reflection of the entrepreneur. Which means if I am a, shoot from the hip, ready, fire, aim kind of guy, my business is ready, fire, aim kind of business. If I'm very methodical and analytical, my business will be methodical and analytical. If I'm messy, my business is messy. If I'm not willing to grow and scale, my business will not be willing to grow and scale. I can say all the right things, but if I'm not living it, it's not going to happen. So probably the first thing, and again, okay, so I know that I said that if there's one thing you take away, here's another. If there's one thing you could take away from this, is learn and unlearn. So constantly absorb as much as you possibly can. Whether that's, I love reading, so I would pick up a book, but whether it's books or audiobooks or podcasts or webinars or workshops or whatever it is that you want to, mentors, coaching, whatever it is that you do, always be learning. And as you're learning, remember that there's no sacred beliefs in business. There's nothing that cannot be put up and examined critically in light of new evidence. So, for example, it was probably the most widely held belief that as brilliant as AI is ever going to be, it'll never perform better than a human being in creative tasks, right? It'll be very good at that kind of technical tasks, but in creativity, humanity will always be, well, it took 6 months, right? If I am still willing and unwilling to change my belief on the superiority of man over machine in that regard, I will be left behind, my business will die. So constantly learn, take your beliefs, critically examine them, and if they do not serve you, unlearn them, thank them, put them aside, move on. There's other things to do. That would probably be my biggest one. As we sometimes forget, we talk about building the business, we talk about building our lives, our professions, careers, families. We talk about all of these things, but really there's only one thing you have to take care of. If you take care of one thing, everything else works. If you neglect one thing, nothing else works. And that's kind of like the 60 cubic inches between your ears. If you take care of this, everything will work. And if you don't take care of this, whether that's not sleeping enough or not having enough water or not learning, this will slow. It doesn't matter if I run a small or large business or if I have a small or large career, it doesn't matter because this is stagnant. So I would say focus on the learning. Just absorb as much as you possibly can. And I would like someone to say, look, you know what, I am reading and I'm implementing what I'm learning, and I'm not going anywhere. I challenge anybody to do that. It will not happen. It will not happen. Just focus on this.
That sounds very simple, but it's very complicated for a lot of people, right?
Simple is not easy.
Simple is not easy, but what an amazing tip there.
Yeah, constantly unlearn, have your own mental models, evaluate what you think is right based on your learning, your point of view, not what somebody else said. So Elon Musk says this is how to do it. No. What do I think I need to do? That's the way he did it. How do I need to do it? You know, Bezos says this, excellent, works for him, doesn't work for me. I need to do it my way. I could take the advice, but there's no, I can't hand over the thinking to somebody else. I have to do my own thinking.
Definitely. That's an amazing tip. Murtaza, any last tip for our entrepreneurs out there?
We start our businesses to serve our communities, whether that's a niche market or a geographical market or an impact that we want to make, whatever. Like you had a dream when you started. Sometimes that dream gets forgotten. I would start by encouraging people to go back to that. Why are you doing this? What does success mean for you? We started with this. What does success mean for you? What would growth bring to you that maybe your current setup does not allow you? You know, so go back to the driving force behind what it is that you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing. As Covey says, right? Begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. If you haven't done this already, understand what success looks like, and then work backwards from there, rather than just trying to go in and get 5% more sales or 3% more profitability. Those metrics don't mean anything if there's no clear end goal. So start with that, and the short term should work itself out.
I love that. Before we go, please invite everybody to Kaizen, Murtaza. I think a lot of entrepreneurs out there will be benefiting from the kind of information and knowledge that you share, the kind of coaching and consulting services that you guys provide. Please invite everybody.
So we have the mastermind, which we're proudly, have Illustrado as part of the amazing community that we're building. We have live coaching calls every month. If any of the listeners want to jump in, just get in touch with Illustrado in the hello@kaizen.ae with Illustrado in the
we will be sharing
subject.
the links
Please do
at the post.
and we will invite them to the mastermind. We are on a mission to help businesses grow. We talk about begin with the end in mind. Let me share something that we're trying. So one of our BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals, is we want to have Kaizen's clients contribute 1% of the city's GDP in the cities that we operate.
That's amazing.
It's scary as hell. So Dubai's, I think 2021 GDP was something like 430 billion dirhams. So 1% is almost 4.5 billion dirhams. 2022 combined client revenues were a little north of 700 million dirhams.
Wow.
Which is a very nice number, but it's a quarter, not even a quarter of where we need to be. So we're ambitious, and if we get to work with businesses that really have big goals and really want to make an impact, it would be an honor to get to work with them as well. So we'd love to see them on.
Well, here's to Kaizen's BHAG.
And here's to Illustrado's continued success.
We are rooting for you guys the same way you are rooting for us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Murtaza.
Thank you.
And for all you entrepreneurs out there, define your own version of success. Please remember that and get out of your own way. Thank you for joining us here at Challenger Brand. See you soon.
Please subscribe to our channel and share our content. For more actionable insights on brand and business building, follow us on our agency's social media pages, Illustrado.co, or subscribe to our newsletter via our website, www.illustrado.co.